History laid the foundation
that informs our conversation. Welcome to the classroom.
From the church to the streets, and even in the suites, and all around the world. I'm gonna keep it real in the classroom.
Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the second episode of season 3 of Fannie Lou's Classroom. We're super duper excited to be here on today. We're hoping you'll get you some different food on today. Yet you're not using your fork and your knife and your spoon, but you're getting some good food that can feed your soul with some good conversation and information. I'm super excited with the guests we have on today. But before I get into that, I always have to shout out the team that makes this happen. We want to shout out Brooke Mosley, who is our our audio engineer. Of course, Roche Moore is also part of the team. She lets Brooke hold it down, but Roche dips in and out, but we want to thank her. Then, of course, we definitely have Shanika and Cheryl, who do all things behind the scenes to make sure that we look good when we go live here noon every Thursday at Fannie Lou's Classroom. So thank you for your support of Season 3. Remember, you can also find us on your other favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Amazon Music, and tons of others. So pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast, you can find Fannie Lou's Classroom. Make sure you share that with your friends, your family, and make sure they subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can be alerted when we go live. We go live at noon, and we rebroadcast at 7 o'clock p.m. in case you can't make it during the noon time. And, of course, we introduced last season, and we're still able. You can support us by purchasing a Fannie Lou's Classroom T-shirt. All you have to do is go to friendshipwest.org, click on Justice, and scroll down. You'll see Fannie Lou's Classroom, the link where you can purchase a T-shirt. And this just helps us to be able to do the podcast, to bring you conversations and to talk about topics that are important to our community, where we really deal with that intersection of faith, politics, and race, things we deal with every single day that we ought to have something to say in terms of a faith community needs to have a response, not just talk about it, but talk about it and talk about ways that we can strategize that our communities might be life-giving and life-sustaining instead of death-dealing. And so we want to be a part of that by having these conversations. So thank you for those of you who have tuned in faithfully every Thursday, and thank you for those who share Fannie Lou's Classroom. We appreciate your ongoing support. So I know last week I said this week we're going to be excited to receive President Lester McCorn, President, Reverend Dr. Lester McCorn, President of Clinton College, but he has scheduling conflict. We're going to talk about Black labor, white wealth, creating communities of opportunities. We're still going to bring that episode to you. He just had a scheduling conflict, so we had to kind of make an adjustment because we wanted to make sure we can still meet you here in the classroom on today. But we have an amazing guest that's with us on this morning. He is a good friend of mine, a brother of mine right here in Dallas, Texas, and this certainly sets up to be an amazing conversation because he's also a brilliant Black man. So we could probably talk about everything related to faith, politics, and even sports and everything else. So let me just go ahead and introduce our guest on today. He is the Reverend Doctor, soon to be double doctor, Jaime Kowlessar. Jaime has relentlessly pursued community activism and involvement, challenging the church to heed the call of Christ, to be relevant and present in the lives of those in need. As a native New Yorker, yes, come on, East Coast. Right. And a transplant to the South. Woo, that had to be a culture shock. Dr. Kowlessar has seen and experienced a range of injustices and believes it is his call of God's church to be his hands and feet in the earth and to make the crooked path straight. Being a voice for communities he serves has compelled him to become a student of people and scriptures. He has an undergraduate degree in theology from Atlantic Union College, a master's of divinity at Andrews University, and a doctor of ministry from United Theological Seminary. He is currently working on his PhD in public policy and social change. Dr. Kowlessar serves as the executive director of Faith in Texas. Faith in Texas is a multi-faith, nonprofit organization that seeks to build power with people so that they may have the power to decide who governs their country. As the executive director of Faith in Texas, he leads the effort to fight inequality by joining with the community and local church leaders to implement strategies that improve Texas's economic, educational, and spiritual conditions. He leads and appoints a diverse band of clergy, Catholics, Muslims, Jews, and Christians to fight against injustice. His thoughts can be read as an op-ed writer in the Dallas Morning News and a frequent contributor to books and publications on race, equality, and social justice. He is also the author of Justice or Just Us, Sermons and Reflections on the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness, and How to Put the Neighborhood Back in the Hood. Wow. Now, see, just reading your bio, I just learned more about you on today.
I feel like I need to walk with a check to pay you for all the wonderful and nice things you said before you read the bio. But I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, we have somebody. Brooke, can we give a shout out to Reverend Doctor? Yes.
I appreciate it. And, you know, it's also interesting that you were going to have Dr. McCorn. He was my academic mentor at United Theological Seminary.
Wow.
So it's a small world. So hopefully
Small world.
I'll try my best to represent him. I won't embarrass him for the years.
We'll
but
have to tell him you stepped in for him.
yeah, and he's in the same PhD program as I am.
Are you? Wow.
He started it, and then after him starting it, I looked into it, and I said I wanted to do it as well. So yeah, Dr. McCorn and I, we go way back.
Wow.
So shout out to Dr. McCorn and all that he's doing. And shout out to you in the podcast, and I'm just excited to be here. If I could have a few minutes.
Yes.
But, you know, growing up in New York. So what turned me towards social justice was one of my friends in seminary gave me Dr. Frederick Haynes' sermon.
Come on.
And Dr. Frederick Haynes led to Dr. Jeremiah Wright, led to Dr. Charles Adams. And so I started hearing these sermons about how to incorporate social justice and blackness in the Word of God, because in my faith tradition, we weren't getting any of that. So I always grew up in seminary as a fan of Friendship West. And then through being a fan of Friendship West, I met Reverend Daniel Ayers with your book, To Serve This Present Age. So I was reading your book while I was studying in seminary and all of that. So I was just absorbing all this social justice, all this blackness, all this womanism, all of that within my theology. And to be in this church right now is a dream come true. So it is. I am honored to be here and to be on this podcast. Fannie Lou Hamer is a hero, and so all that it embodies and represents. So I'm like a kid in a candy store right now. So if I don't stop smiling, you understand why.
Wow, now that's a powerful testimony, and I'm gonna make sure Dr. Haynes hears this portion. Well, we want him to hear all of the classroom,
right?
But certainly, I think it's so important. It's just always important for people, particularly in the justice movement, to hear the ways in which we can inspire others to join this movement, because this can be a lonely work, right?
Very.
And it's not a lot of people who do this work. We are a small group.
Yep.
Right. So I think it's always important, because sometimes you can just labor, because you do the labor because, you know, God's called you to it. You'll do it whether somebody calls your name or not. But it's always good to know that you're appreciated, that what you're doing matters, right? And that you're helping someone. So I know Dr. Haynes would love to hear that, right? That you started, and then how that led you to Jeremiah Wright, Charles Adams. I mean, all very, you know, prophets, right? And very prolific by way of the proclamation of the word. But not only that, but what it means to stand 10 toes down and never being knocked off their square, no matter what has come at them from the general public, right?
Correct.
That tries to tear them down, to try to say that they are not of God, you know, et cetera, right? So I think it's so important when we can hear that.
Yeah.
That helps someone. And now you're here. You're part of now this journey with us.
That's
this
right.
journey for justice, truth, reconciliation, what all that means to tell the truth in love.
Yep.
Right? So, man, you got me excited now. Now I'm looking at this PhD in policy and social change. I might have to.
Hey, come on over.
Look into that.
Come on. Everything there is rooted in social justice.
Yes.
And, you know, it's not faith-based, but you still free to express your faith. But, you know, we do queer theology, we do womanism, we do everything. All the classes are centered and rooted in that. So when I found out Dr. McCorn was there, I was like, okay, let me check it out. And I didn't do it, but I wish I did. They also have an emphasis in MLK's beloved community. So all your work can be rooted in what Dr. King was talking about when it comes to beloved community. So
wow,
there's room for you.
Let me check that out. I might have to look into that. That sounds fascinating. So, reading your bio and now getting that background, I have a whole nother set of questions, but I want to at least talk about something I think is important for people to know more about. So Faith in Texas. So my first introduction was probably more than a decade ago, perhaps. And I know it has changed significantly since then. So maybe you can just start off by telling us, number one, what is Faith in Texas as an organization? What are some of the grounding principles, right? What centers the work of Faith in Texas? So let's start there.
Okay. All right. Great question. Thank you for that. So our mission statement on paper is we exist to build power with people so that we, the people, can decide who governs our communities or governs our state. So in reality, Faith in Texas in this phase with me as the executive director, and shout out to Reverend Edwin Robinson, who's my right-hand man. We just decided that Faith in Texas wants to be the organization that educates, that does faith-based liberation work. So we've moved from being an issue-based organization where we'll jump on gun control, we'll jump on this, like all these ills. We noticed that wasn't sustainable. So what we realized is that if we become the source to do faith-based education, liberation work with pastors, and let them go out and teach their congregations and teach them to do the work, whatever that issue of justice may be, and we stand in support. So rather than, my philosophy has changed over the years, and even while I was a volunteer at Faith in Texas, that we would come in and we would ask churches to pay dues and to pay money to us. And I said, being a pastor and having a small church, we ain't got money like that to be paying out money. So, and I think it was even a conversation with you where I was like, that makes sense that we should be investing and pouring into these churches. Because 9 times out of 10, the churches that really want to do this social church, they're not big churches.
That's right.
And some of the pastors are bivocational. So they're struggling already. So why am I taking money from you? There's a whole lot of foundations out there that could fund this work. So we really want to be the organization that supports, that helps in any way possible, and stands behind the church, not lead the church. Because the movement was always done by the people, by the churches. Yeah.
Wow. So let's stay parked there for a moment, right? Because I think that shift is needed, is necessary. And I think it's so powerful because we don't do enough, in my estimation. And I say we, those of us who are seeking to really strive to really make beloved community a reality, we don't necessarily take the time to sit, to write, and to educate and give people the tools and that main tool has to be the education part of it, right? Why you're doing what you're doing, how you go about doing what you're doing, in history, right? All of that matters. So I'm glad that shift was made, because I think that's really, we need a wheelhouse, right? Where we can go to and say, you can go to Faith in Texas. They can train you, right? Not only train you, but we can also send you through an education curriculum. I think that's so important. I love that, right? And I think another thing you pointed out that people have to remember, Friendship West is an anomaly.
Yes.
To be a mega church doing justice work, it's plenty of mega black churches, but it's not rooted in justice work. So the fact that Dr. Haynes for over 40 years has sustained a ministry rooted and grounded in justice work is amazing.
Absolutely.
And I hope it serves as a signal, right, to other congregations that you can do Jesus and justice and have a healthy, thriving ministry. Right? And so, because some people don't want to get into it because maybe how the church feels. But I think we are an example of how that is possible.
Yeah.
How you do the both and. We deal with the body and the soul, no separation, right? We don't have this dualistic theology. And so I think it's important. So I want to say that first, that we're an anomaly, right? So we know that. And I said that to say because, as you mentioned, most churches are small, which the average church is a small, we would call a small, medium church. That's average. We're the ones that are not average. This is not an average church that we're sitting in, right? And I think that's so important because everybody can be a part of it.
That's right.
You don't have to be a mega ministry like Dr. Haynes to do this work. It's going to require all of us to do the work. Because the reality is, like in most churches, it's a mega church, but when it comes to the harvest is plentiful,
Right.
but the laborers are
Come
few,
on.
right?
Come on.
So I think it's so important for people to hear, like, no matter what size your church is, you too can be a part of this, and that's the beauty of Faith in Texas, because you don't have to do it alone. There's an organization that can equip you. You're not standing by yourself. So it also shows the ways in which we don't stand alone, that we do it as a collective, because people power is so important, because they can't pick you off when you're a part of something larger.
Right.
Right? And I think that's so important. So I'm glad you said that, all size churches. And I like the fact that it's ecumenical, right? And interfaith. No, it's interfaith.
It's interfaith.
And so, because I think that's the future.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn how to, regardless of where we sit, our religious beliefs, that should not stop you from working with others. Because sometimes I think we feel if we sit at the table with Muslims and Jews, our Christianity is going to be lessened. And I'm saying if you feel that way, you need to go back and re-examine.
That's right. That's right. Go back and study.
Go back and do some more study
Right.
and do more of your spiritual formation before you come back out.
Right.
Right. You should be able to really be able to sit at any, because you're who you are and you're bringing that to the table.
Right.
Because the reality is, most religions, right, we have some of the same undercurrents, right? What does it mean to take care of those who are the most vulnerable in society? What does it mean to do the right thing? What does it mean to speak to? So I'm saying and that's why we're able to do the interfaith work.
That's right.
We come and we agree upon these shared agenda, these shared principles that we have. Yeah, you may word it a different way, but we're all striving for the same thing.
That's right.
So why not come together? Because we're fighting like these powers and principalities, right? It's not flesh and blood. And so
That's right.
it's going to require us to really come together to do that. So I like that it's interfaith. I like that it reaches out to small and large. It's whosoever will come, and we're going to all be equipped together to then fight these systems.
Right.
Because individuals, whether it's an individual person or individual organization, cannot beat this institution and
way.
these systems.
No way.
So I like that you said, I just want to touch on that because I want people
Yeah.
to hear that and know that we need everybody.
We need everybody.
Right.
And I'm glad you pointed, because the work is great. The work is large, right? So I always, I'm going to date myself. I go back, Transformers, right? The old, not the movies.
Okay.
Not the movies. I mean, Voltron, right?
Okay.
That's right. I'm
Cheryl getting excited.
Cheryl get excited. That's right. I'm Mighty Mouse. I'm going to go back. Name all the more
Come
cartoons,
on.
right? But, when you take the example of Voltron, you take the example of Transformers, you had Optimus Prime, who was the main deal, right?
Right.
But when the enemy was large, they came together.
That's right.
They had
That's
little
right.
Bumblebee. They had all the different ones. So I see the work. The work needs to be that, right? We
Right.
need to have an interfaith movement, and we need to be rooted in human rights.
That's right. Right.
At the end of the day, I don't care about anything else.
That's right.
If you're not about human rights and fighting for the least of these and being the voice of the voiceless, and not speaking for them on behalf, but speaking with them,
Right.
leading them, let them lead the movement. That's what I'm looking for.
That's
so
right.
It don't matter to me. All that differences we have. Look, at the end of the day, my take is, and just being around with different faith groups, none of us have it figured out.
That's right. That's right.
We all still figuring it out.
That's right.
But we know one thing. We know that the principalities and powers are uniting, and they are working together.
And I'm going to use your language and the machinations
That's
that go on.
That's right. All the machinations.
All the machinations that take place. Because there's always the scheming, there's always the plotting, the planning, right? To be I say diabolical.
Yeah,
and I say
it is.
evil. And it's ongoing. It's never stopping. And sometimes we get caught up in, oh, you're this, you're Jew, you're Muslim. While we're doing all that,
Oh,
they're getting it all.
They signing the bill.
And ensure that's right. And we look up, and legislators passed over 700 so bills
right.
that are not to our benefit.
Correct.
So while we're over here doing this, they're like, okay, check,
Yep.
check.
Yep.
And so I think it's so important. I just think that's critical, right? And I think we do have to learn. I always tell people, we have to learn how to expand the table. The table has to be larger. And we can't get caught up in the small things. We have to say, and to your point, I like how you said human rights. So I say about Fannie Lou Hamer all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Because she was a great civil rights leader. No, Fannie Lou Hamer was a human rights activist. in my estimation. She was a human rights activist, not just voting rights. She was into food justice, environmental justice, her understanding of land and labor. I mean, she was, Little Haven was phenomenal.
Yeah, women's reproductive rights.
Right,
all of
reproductive
that.
right. You name it, because she understood the human condition in a very particular way. One, because it happened to her.
Yeah, right. That's right.
She understood what it meant for a medical system to completely disregard who she was, her agency over her own body. She understood what it meant to be hungry, what it meant for others to be hungry and not have food. I mean, she understood that. And I often talk about her testimony before the Credentials Committee at the Democratic National Convention, right? Where she's giving her story, what happened, et cetera. But I always say, if you listen to it really, and she shifted, in my opinion, she shifted that thing from civil rights and from civil rights and voting rights to what does it mean for you all to be human? When she says, I question America, are you the land of the free and the home of the brave? I think she's saying, are you not human?
That's right. That's good.
Right? And so I think she understood that in a very particular way.
Yeah.
So to your point,
Yeah.
that we have to root this in, what does it mean to be human? We're asking that question. I guess what anthropologists ask, right? The cultural anthropologists ask, what does it mean to be human? And that's who we are at our core.
Yeah.
And yes, we have our religious practices, beliefs, that's just part of the formation, and that's part of the, how cultures emerge and grow and how you self-identify.
Right.
It's part of your identity. It's what we've done to identify, to be part of a village, to be connected.
Right.
But that cannot supersede, in my opinion, what does it mean to be human? Because that's why you can have folks, down at the border saying they're fine with what the governor is doing.
Right.
To migrants.
Right.
To children.
Right.
And you're more rooted in they're taking our jobs up and against the inhumane conditions and taking of life.
Right.
Intentionally. So we have to begin to move beyond that. And I think that's why it's important for it to be interfaith, where we all are getting the same baseline, like this is how we enter the work. We're being educated the same way so that we can then address these real social issues, right, that are really killing people every day.
Yeah.
The structural, and I tell people all the time, we definitely have to go in the streets, march and protest when we have police brutality, hands down. That's not even questionable. But we need to be just as much as in an uproar of the structural, right, death.
Right.
Because that's killing more of us than
right.
in the streets, right?
That's right.
Because it's a slow death.
Yeah.
If it's the environment. I think about Marsha Jackson all the time. Yeah, the shingles are gone, but that's still contaminated land.
It's still there.
So she's still breathing in those toxins.
That's right.
Why hasn't that been changed in the structure?
That's right. That's right. You could get rid of Jim Crow,
Come on.
but we still feel the effects of it.
That's right.
It's still lingering in the air, right? It's
Right.
still breathing it in.
That's right.
So all of that too. And I want to also emphasize this point that, we're at Fannie Lou Hamer's classroom, and you brought up the inhumane treatment, dehumanization. I think it's important for the advancement of the work that we center women's voices, particularly Black women's voices. Because I think Reverend Camilla Hall Sharp said it impacted me that when we fight for the rights for Black women, everybody benefits from it.
Everybody.
Right? And we know that the Black woman is the most ignored, mistreated human being on earth, no matter where you are, right? So those are some of the things. And I think, like, as you mentioned, with Friendship West being unapologetically a social justice church, my desire with Faith in Texas is that we need to have 50,000 more Friendship
That's
Wests.
right.
And it could be all different sizes.
That's right.
But that we are all moving and geared towards being unapologetically about social justice and centering the most stepped on communities on this earth. Black people, right?
Yeah.
Dark-skinned people.
Dark-skinned people, no matter where you are.
Dark-skinned
That's
people
right.
are mistreated and dehumanized. So we really need to, and so, to our white partners and to anybody who's listening, they come in knowing that, right? Like understanding,
right,
this is the process and this is the way that we fight for justice.
Well, and I think if you're about human rights, you
go.
wouldn't have a problem with that. And, and that's part of it, right?
Right.
If you're about what is right.
Exactly.
And I think that's where it starts, right?
That's right.
And this is a quick example of how this happened. If somebody's wondering, well, what does that look like for white people? So we did and I think you were there as well. We went to Austin with our Friendship Was Day at the Capitol.
Yes.
And we had the rally around Black maternal health. So we were very clear about, no, we're going to say Black maternal health and deal with the Black mortality and morbidity rates of Black women. And I remember one of my partners who was Caucasian, because I'm part of Texas Impacts Board, which is pretty predominantly a white-led organization. But I'm always showing up as my Blackest self.
Got to.
I don't care where we are. If I'm the only one in the room, doesn't matter to me. I'm still the Blackest. I'm going to be me.
Be you.
And so they're like, well, do you want to just kind of say it's also, Hispanic women also, and you also have white number? I said, no, what we're going to do is talk about the Black women because it's the most dastardly numbers that we see.
Right.
Because if you help the Black women survive, all the other women are going to be just fine.
Right.
To your point, right? And so what we see was like, oh, great, perfect. So, right, it wasn't that much pushback. It was more of like, you're right. Well, yeah, I wasn't going to change it.
Right.
But I had to make sure I let her know, and this is why. And in the future, as you work with Black women, right, understand some issues, you have to name it.
That's right.
And we're not going to change it. Unapologetic. It is what it is. We're going to name that because that's the issue. And we're not trying to make somebody feel comfortable because we're dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's critical for us.
Right.
And so we also had Aaron, I think Reverend Aaron Walter with the U's, right?
With the UUs.
I loved how I had her on the program, right?
Yep.
I didn't even have to do much prompting. She was like, white people in the back, this is not our fight. Oh, no, she said, this is not our day. Stand in the back and support and go inside and advocate for these bills, right? But that, to your point, when you are trying to do the right thing and you are really entering this space as a human, then you understand that what you're coming into, and it's not a problem for you.
Yeah.
And I think Aaron and B. Moorhead are classic examples of how white people should show up and understand when it's time for you to be adjacent over here.
That's right.
You don't need to be in the middle. So she had the mic, but the mic was like giving this. That's not our day. Don't insert yourself, but you can go here and advocate to some of these legislators who may not listen to the Black folks.
There you go.
Because that's how you help. You use your privilege, your power, and your position.
There you go.
To advocate.
That's
right.
That's
so
right.
I love that and I like that about Faith in Texas. And I guess not to mention, I guess as a side note, I'm a newly appointed board member.
Yeah, that's right.
Faith in Texas.
That's
I'm super excited about being a part of making this happen. Right. Because I believe in obviously what we do here at Friendship West. Dr. Haynes, and particularly now his elevated status as the president and CEO of Push, which we know he's going to really, I know is going to build that capacity.
Absolutely.
Built on all the work that Reverend Jackson has done over the decades, all the labor he's put into this work, and Dr. Haynes is the perfect person to honor that legacy and to build on that legacy, right? And I just see how all this could be working for our good, right?
Yep.
Of how we finally come together as a collective to deal with these systems and institutions that keep churning out, as we say, systems, as Dr. Haynes often been saying lately, and we know these systems are designed to produce outcomes.
Yeah.
Those outcomes are going to be beneficial to some.
That's right.
Deadly to others. Not to policy, I tell you all the time, public policy or politics, really, right? It's just a matter of who's deserving and entitled.
Right.
And somebody is somewhere sitting saying, this group deserves this, and they're entitled to this group is not.
Right.
That's really in distribution of resource. That's what it's who gets what.
That's right.
And we have to do that as a collective, as opposed to wanting to be the one that gets the credit. Well, let them talk to me. I'm the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
I'm the one.
Yeah, we ain't got time for that.
And we have to learn how to say, well, Danielle, can you come? But I'm not going to ask. No, if I come, I need Cheryl, Jamie, and Brooke to be there.
Yeah.
We also have to learn how to do that to let them know we're all together.
That's right.
So we also have to kind of lay our little egos aside sometimes too and say, I don't come alone.
Yeah.
I got 5 other people to be at this table too.
That's right.
Right. And that's one thing I love about you and Edwin, because Edwin would do that quickly. Like, well, yeah, I think we need to bring. Sometimes Brother Edwin though.
Yeah. Edwin is just a life within itself.
He's a life man. I love him so much,
right.
and I love him too because he's just his real authentic self, and I love that. But I appreciate that, right? Because it is not just me. I have some other people need to be at this table too.
That's right.
So they know it's not just me you have to deal with.
That's right.
Because each one of us represent. Because think about all the small churches. You have a few mega churches like a Friendship West. Now think about if they see, because they know behind even the smallest church, if it's just 50 members, if it's 100, you add all that up, that adds up.
That adds up. That's a whole lot of votes. That's a whole lot of money. That's a whole lot of power.
A lot of power. And we just talking about Dallas and faith. It's called Faith in Texas, not Faith in Dallas.
That's right.
So then you multiply that throughout this state.
That's right.
I'm saying there's nothing we can't do.
That's right.
We can move this system and even build alternative parallel systems for our surviving and thriving.
That's right. I always look at it at a snowflake. A snowflake has no power by itself, But you put all those snowflakes together, you're going to have an avalanche. And that's what Faith in Texas wants to do. We want to create an avalanche of justice.
Yes.
So that you got to make preparations when we show up.
Right.
That's right.
Real
You
talk.
got That's right. When I'm from the North New York, when it's about to snow, they got the trucks out to throw the sand down and everything. So I want the legislation to know, Faith in Texas, we coming. Y'all got to prepare for us. That we putting y'all on notice.
So, I think we know you kind of laid out for us. I don't know if you all let me say we, since I'm now part of the organization.
That's right.
And then, because I haven't been to a board meeting, so before somebody like, well, you remember you asking him, well, I haven't been onboarded yet.
That's right. Tomorrow, all that's going to happen.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
That's right. I put it out there in the atmosphere.
There you go. But let's talk about this. So let's talk to the people about, so they're like, oh, that Faith in Texas sounds like something I may want to look into. So we're talking about organizations being a part, like organizing churches. But what about if I'm just an individual? I attend a church. My church is not into this. They won't be into this, but I am. This is important to me, and I want to participate. How would that person get engaged?
Oh, there's room for everybody. So all it would take is just send me an email. All it would take was just show up at one of our meetings. So we don't discriminate against who wants to come. If you're showing up, we know that you want to be a part of. So you don't have to be affiliated with a denomination. You can just be a humanist that wants to fight for human rights. We are not discriminating against anyone in that regard, but just know that you're walking into like a faith-based, directive that how we come, an interfaith-based directive. But whosoever will, because right now post-pandemic, we've got to start looking at the drop-off in church affiliation, and not just church attendance, but affiliation. Right, because during the pandemic, it wasn't a good look for the church, right? And the churches like Friendship West that are doing the work, it's unfortunate that sometimes those churches don't get the enough airtime,
right,
and that stuff. You're gonna get the silly churches that's out there doing foolishness, and so people judge all the churches like that, right? So not everybody's gonna know a Dr. Frederick Haynes, not everybody's gonna know a Daniel Ayers. So we just know and understand that with the shifting landscape of our world post-pandemic, there's some folk that just don't want to identify with religion anymore.
Right.
But they still want to do human rights work. So we say, hey, the door is open. So please, send me an email. You send Reverend Edwin Robinson an email. Send Daniel Ayers an email. However, but if you stay in tune with our website and things that are going on our Instagram, then you'll see what we're doing and just show up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now let's shift a little bit into, because we talked about you being executive director, but you're also a pastor. And you mentioned earlier about your denomination as you were going through your seminary training. So talk to us a little bit more about, I want to hear more. Now I guess we can talk a little more about Dr. Kowlessar, the person, Jaime, right? Your church. Let's talk about your church and maybe give us a little bit of background on, I guess, your theological formation, right? Yeah. And then I'm sure it took a shift at some point, but also how you pastor and how does your church respond, right? Because you're in a different setup, right? We're a Baptist church. Baptists, we don't do that moving around weird point. If I get mad, I go start my church in the corner. Who gonna stop me?
Right.
We real free. Hey,
right.
That's what we pride ourselves on, right? We're not tethered to anything.
Right. That's right. I love it.
We don't have politics.
I love it. I take my toys and I'm gonna go somewhere else. That's right.
And I'm gonna take half that deacon boy with me.
Right.
So so talk to us about who just talk to us about that.
Yeah, I'll do the short version, and hopefully everybody will understand it. So Seventh-day Adventists came out in the 1800s during that whole Great Awakening movement when a lot of other denominations started. So we actually, our parents are the Methodists. So everything that we do is pretty much Methodist style, but just on Saturday, right? So even the order of our service. So our tradition is rooted in that Methodist tradition. Now, don't get it twisted. Not AME,
right?
Not AME Zion. It's
right.
Methodist,
Come
right?
on, because there is a difference.
There is a difference,
yes.
Right? Even though I think we should have adapted the AME Zion model where the blacks moved aside and did their own thing and let the whites have their thing. So needless to say, Seventh-day Adventists are very focused on last day events. So eschatology. So in their thinking, they may not say it out loud, but just in the theological formation that I grew up with, all these social injustices don't get caught up in that, right? Because essentially those things are supposed to happen before the return of Jesus Christ. So it's all about, that's why it's in the name, Advent, because it's waiting for the second coming. And I grew up, just thinking that, because that's the only faith tradition I had. And so in undergrad, never read books by James Cone, never saw Howard Thurman and Jesus, never saw anything that had to do, bell hooks, anything that had to do with black was not part. So it was very white, very European all through it up. And I think when I got to seminary and I went to an Adventist seminary, and then I was able to meet with some of my brothers that went to Oakwood, which is a HBCU
in Huntsville,
and even still there, it's still very kind of that that kind of European kind of theology. I began my mind and my thinking started opening up, because I was saying to myself, this is weird. That why does my religion feel anti-black, right? Like why can't I just talk about what's happening in the world, what's happening to black people? And then got hooked on a Freddie Haynes sermon. I don't even know which one it was. I just got one, and then I just had to I used to be on your website downloading.
That happened.
Downloading
That can happen,
a whole bunch of
yes.
sermons, and I just kept hearing how he incorporated hip hop, how he incorporated blackness, and then Jeremiah Wright. And then my school was in Michigan, so we used to drive down to Charles G. Adams Church, and we used to listen to him preach as well. So long story short, the theological framework that I grew up in, that I studied, was really, don't worry about what's happening in the world. Let's worry about making ourselves ready for the second coming. And then it dawned on me, that's a very imperialistic way of thinking, that if you ain't got no worries or cares about the world, then your scriptures don't have to speak to your present time. You can use the scriptures to speak to the future. And then I started realizing that some of the white counterparts in the Seventh-day Adventist Church were telling their members how to vote, who to vote for. And so I'm like, wait a minute. Y'all caring about how y'all live right now, right? Because y'all want to make sure your politicians and protect that. So I was turned out, if I can use that language.
You can't just in this classroom.
Right. That's right. So I was turned out from there. And so I started preaching more blackness, more social justice. Also, too, I have an immigrant background.
Okay.
So in New York City, which is predominantly, West Indian, Caribbean, that's also, now you sounding like them black Americans.
Wow. Okay.
Right? So you sounded like them
That's
black.
a whole nother
That's a whole nother conversation. So,
yes.
So I'm bringing it into that there were many times, even today, it's in my ministry, where I preach, and they'll say, Pastor, we don't want to hear all that social justice stuff, which is code word for I don't want to hear that black American stuff. Right? So, but I've understood, and I think like watching, my heroes like Dr. Haynes and Jeremiah Wright and all of the list of social justice preachers, that you got to stand 10 toes down and stick to what you believe. So I've been ostracized.
Yeah.
I went to Andrews University, which is where our seminary is. I got invited there maybe like right before the pandemic when Trump got elected. And I preached a Black History sermon. They wanted me to preach a Kumbaya sermon.
Right.
But I was like, no, this is not time. It's an urgent matter. And I preached this prophetic message, and I got blackballed. I was called the most racist person they've ever met, all of that stuff.
That you ever met.
Ever met. Yeah, I'm like, you ever heard of Hitler?
Right. I'm like, that you ever met.
Ever met? Right. That's right. In the whole world, right. So, but I know that's that white fragility.
That's it.
Once you confront them.
Absolutely.
And once you confront them, especially a black body doing that, they don't like that. So, there was a whole uprising because of that sermon at Andrews University. So, but I was just taken to the point where if you're doing this work and you got to preach this work, you got to come with it with courage.
That's right.
And who are you working for?
That's right.
As they say, are you a chaplain of the empire or a prophet of resistance? And I've always said I want to be a prophet of resistance. So wherever the chips lay, and I know that God is always going to make room for me.
That's right.
To be around people that share the same thing, share the same thoughts and values that I have. So I'm at Friendship West right now, right? We're on this podcast, but that's a short story of just being a Seventh-day Adventist and doing social justice. And it's getting better because there are other pastors that are doing it now.
That's
too.
good.
So, I see that, so I'm happy about that. But there's still a whole lot of work to do because we still don't ordain women.
Oh, really?
Oh no, we got a different title for women.
And what's that title? I'm curious.
Commissioned. So I
Commission.
I don't go to ordination services.
You go to commissioning services.
I don't even go to that.
Yeah, I was gonna say you won't support that.
I don't
either.
support that because you're basically you're treating women like second class citizens,
Right.
because you're hiring them to meet all the same standards that I meet, but you're not giving them the title. You're exploiting them,
right? Because I imagine it also messes up. You don't get to pay.
There you go. Well, they'll backdoor it, but here's what you don't get: you can't be the president of a conference.
Okay. Because you're not licensed.
Because you're not. So you have a license to do what all the pastors do. But if you were an Adventist pastor and you got commissioned and I'm ordained, your name can never come up to be the president of the world church or a conference.
Because I'm not ordained, even though I'm licensed.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. You're commissioned.
You know, the mimicking of patriarchy in these systems that never served us, still don't serve us, the way in which we mimic those, right?
Right.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's interesting. I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's why you're not going to see a lot of us in circles like this. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
which-
showing up at for reproductive rights, right? You're not going
Right.
to see us because we really, first of all, we don't believe in mixing and mingle with other religions. And then number two, social justice is human rights is just not a straight up fundamental belief. We may do charitable stuff, but it's not
Right.
It's not a fundamental belief where we will stand against policies that directly impact Black and brown people. The whole
Including those who sitting in the Seventh-day Adventist church.
majority.
Right. Wow. Okay, that's a good lesson for me there. I just never knew that much about, Seventh-day Adventists. So I thank you
Yeah,
for that
yeah.
insight because I
And-
think that's important.
And I'll tag one more part in this too. And I don't want to dominate it with just my religion, but it's a worldwide church. But they'll fight for justice in other parts in third country worlds, but they will not do it here in America.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll build wells in Africa so that they can get water. They'll go meet with, politicians and all that other stuff.
Oh, they will meet with politicians in other
Yeah,
countries.
they'll take pictures and meet with them. Yeah, they'll have that. We even had one famous Adventist evangelist, Doug Batchelor, and this is funny. He has a picture of him with DeSantis. They up in the same room.
So what that speaks to, though, right, to what you just said when you said some of the other preachers in your denomination, you heard them telling people how to vote. And
Right.
that's the whole point. Even because, that's not, as you know, not limited to Seventh-day Adventists. We have Baptists that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't y'all be out there preaching all that? That is not of God. While the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
their communities are full with everything they need. They're making sure those they elected are in check, that they're doing the right thing. And I don't understand how we miss that.
Right.
So they're telling you not to the whole time. They're making sure they're dealing policy. They're making laws. They're making sure resources flow in their direction.
Right.
And we just have to not follow for the okie doke, right? And I tell people that's that theology that sanctions slavery, Jim Crow segregation. That's the theology you keep upholding in blackface.
Yep.
And the very people you're preaching to are being impacted by these systems.
Yep.
So that's why I think the work is so important, and that's why I think it has to be interfaith.
Mm-hmm. It has to be.
It has to be interfaith. So it's a lot of work we have to do to detox from all this toxic theology.
Yeah.
Or this slave religion, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That,
Yep. I got rid of all them Matthew Henry commentaries, all of them books that I was downloading in my system and said, nah, I can't read that no more. I can't touch that.
because unfortunately, most people who are preaching now, if they don't read those books, they follow particular preachers who preach that, right?
Yep.
And it's hard for some people to let that theology go.
Yeah, it is.
They're so tethered to it, right? And you don't understand, you're not feeding people that which truly liberates.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right, but you're preaching this God, because God is a God of justice, a God of liberation, of healing. You're right. It's all those things. If you're not preaching liberation, then what are you pulling people out of?
That's right. That's right. You pulling them from one plantation to another.
To another one,
That's
right?
And you controlling how they think, and that's very Adventist. Like we have our own books, we have our own theology, and it's really It's really about making sure that you protect this institution. That's and it boils down to it. Protect this institution.
Now, see, the same way we think that way, like that thinking is necessary. How we think about community.
Yeah.
Be that dogmatic.
Right.
About protect, because I always tell people when we had the slammer in Bama, right? I said, I like the way black folks showed up. I said, now look at that as a metaphor,
Right.
that the black man becomes right the community, and all the white people, the various ways the systems come at us, and we need to pull together just like we did that and attack and tear down. Right, the ways in which we know policy down in Austin, for example, the State House.
Yeah.
Where all kind of foolishness goes on. I mean, some of it, when you just sit, I tell you, just sometimes just listen to some of them talk about their bill and get asked about their bill, and they can't answer questions about their own bill.
Right.
Then it passes like crazy.
Right.
And it's like, come on, we got to wake up, right?
That's right.
Because other than that, we're always responding. We're responding to what happens to us. And you just cannot always be on our heels.
Right.
We can't live in survival mode all our lives.
That's right. That's
Like
right.
somewhere we got to get in front of this thing, but that only happens through consistency, through doing the tough work, and those who have the capacity and desire to do what I call that grinding work.
Yeah.
The groundhog work.
Yeah.
It won't be all this stuff you see on TV in front of the cameras, getting your name called. It's in the back room. It's reading data, interpreting data, coming up with strategy, and
Yeah.
and that's almost to the degree, like Cheryl can probably speak to, she don't like being on camera, so she wouldn't speak to it.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, like she's really good at making sure we have structure, infrastructure.
Yeah.
Because you have to think with the end in mind.
There you go.
And that kind of work, because we had a leadership team meeting that was maybe 2-3 hours long. Everybody, and I'm not saying everybody has to be built for that. We need to understand that work is important,
Right.
and that work has to be invested in. Like, so Faith in Texas, for example, all the good work we're going to be doing around that, making curriculum. Why we need money? Well, we need that cost.
Yeah.
So can people see the value in giving money to Faith in Texas to create something, to build a structure that can survive all of us?
Right.
That's the other thing. How do we build institutions so that we're long gone, the generations behind us don't have to start from scratch?
Yeah.
And they can just continue to build and be better.
Yeah.
So talk to us about how somebody can support Faith in Texas, because I know it costs money to do work.
Absolutely.
This is not free.
Absolutely. The gospel is free, but ministry
Right,
costs money,
right.
right?
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? So, we are 501c3, so all donations will, you can always get a tax write-off for it. So that's all it takes is really just writing a check, monetary-wise, and that you can help us to continue to fund and support the work. But then another way to really help is just talk about Faith in Texas, right? Like if you see us doing something, you see us on our Instagram, just spread the word. Because the other thing too that we probably may have to have another conversation about is how these funders control how you do the work.
That's right. That's
right?
right.
Like they dictate how they want the work to be done. And then now a lot of them have this practice where it's like, don't reach out to us, we'll reach out to you. So you can't even like send a letter because they're very like careful, and they have their particular, now I'm not arguing or saying things, but they have their particular things that they want to fund in their
Right.
organizations of how they want to, disseminate the money. So we got that. So what you said, and I think with the conversation that you're going to have with Dr. McCorn is important, because we need to develop the black wealth, the group economics, so that organizations that are doing work for black people don't have to depend on these wealthy Ford foundations,
That's right.
all these all these wealthy people to decide how they want the work to be done.
Let me tell you why that's important, because also the way funding is going, particularly the large
Right.
name fund like Lilly, Ford, et cetera. Because now also what I see a move them doing is, okay, well, Jamie, let me get you over here now. Can you pull in all the mother black folks over
There you go.
here? And I just deal with you.
Right.
So now you're also setting up this way in which you have a HNIC.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And that's so antithetical
That is. That's right.
to what it means for us to be in community with one another. And it's for me, I see it as a form of anti-blackness too, right? Because it's also this notion of you can't be free to be who you are as a village.
Right.
And that we all come kind of in this circular, we come around this table, and the table is not this, but it's this. It's a circle. Like we
Right.
all bring value. We all have a say in this. It's not one person that everything is passing through
Right.
to dictate really, right, how this is going to go.
Right.
So to your point, and nobody's going to pay you to talk about them.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to pay you to confront perhaps how it could be their ethical practices.
Yep.
It could be their ethics. It could be their like a Walmart. It could be the way in which you treat your employees.
Yep.
Right. And I'm, of course, we're part of the Same Do It Proctor Conference. Dr. Haynes is, co-founder. And I serve as the co-chair with Dr. Carruthers by way of the annual conference that we do in February. And I can tell you, Proctor Board turned down Walmart money, and it was money.
Wow.
I'm not talking about thousands.
Right. Yeah,
But because it totally went against our principles. We don't like how you treat the women in the workplace, how you work your workers right up to the edge where they still are part-time, so you don't have to pay them benefits, you work them off the clock. We turned it down for that reason, but they would have given it to us, and then we couldn't then go out there and protest against them.
Right.
So, I'm saying we have to understand that as Black folks and folks who care about human rights, we have to support the work.
Yep.
And I'm saying, if it's just $5, President Obama showed you when he ran for office, what did he say? Just give me 5 or 10.
Right.
That's going to add up.
It's going to add up.
Right. So I'd rather have somebody give me a $10 donation every month than somebody's give me a $1 donation.
Yep.
So how do we, that's something we got to really talk about. And that's why I was excited about Dr. McCorn coming on, but we're going to definitely pick that conversation up. Whether we don't talk about what it really means to build wealth, we are going to be in trouble. We do not build that for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that speaks to our business community. How do we also get our Black-owned businesses to think about, you may be doing well for your family, but think about job creation.
There you go.
Think about when you do your business, how do you see your business plan where 10, 15 years down the road, you're saying, okay, your child's going to Dillard Fort County. When they get out, we have a job in our county department.
Right.
But we got to think more than just, what I'm saying?
Right.
I want to say mom and pop. I don't want. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I feel
we
you.
have to really think about job creation as opposed to just I run a business.
Yeah, it's succession planning.
Yes,
right.
right.
How do we plan for future generations? Like in my churches that I pastor, I tell all my senior members, please don't sell your houses. Please don't sell your land. I try to tell everybody in the southern sector of Dallas, please don't sell.
Yes.
Sit on it. If you need, and that's where I think where churches can also where they understand help them pay their property taxes, or donate it to the church so that we can hold on,
Right.
so that we can have, because you already see what's happening on the 35.
Ooh, goodness.
You see all of that development is coming this way, and it's just going to push.
It's coming fast.
So fast, and that wasn't an overnight plan.
Of course not.
They've been working on that. They've been sitting on that plan for years. They just striking now because the land is cheap, it's underdeveloped, and so now we can move in. So, those are all part of the long-term strategic plan of Faith in Texas, right? Like, how do we educate?
That's right.
So that we're not we thinking beyond our noses.
We have to.
We got to.
And to your point, what is our 20, 50, 100-year plan?
Right.
And that's why I think it's critical for Faith to pull this group together, because sometimes we just cannot seem to come to the table when the cameras are not on.
Right. That's right.
We're not at a press conference.
That's right.
But can we come there when nobody knows we're meeting and strategizing?
Yep.
And really have a plan? Because I can tell you, as you know, downtown, state, they planning.
Oh, yeah.
And the white churches are planning, trust me.
Come on.
Robert Jefferson don't even try to hide it.
He don't hide
First
it.
Baptist.
Let me tell you, funny story. So when I first moved to Texas, I had a friend that was a pastor, and they wanted to show me different churches. So I'm like, all right, let's go do it. So I ain't never heard of First Baptist in my life. So I get up in there, so I'm sitting there. I'm like, first of all, why you invite me here? You know who I am. And so I'm sitting there, but all I'm seeing is red all throughout the church. It's like red. He got this big old screen, red. And then and then Abbott rolls out, and then he's talking, and everybody cheering. And then, but here's the part that tripped me out. I'm looking at the black people sitting in there. I'm questioning in my brain, like, what are you doing here? What is happening here? But to your point, the white churches are not playing. They know. They listen to Steve Bannon. They infiltrating these school boards, and from the school boards, they are infiltrating policy.
That's right.
So they are playing chess, and we need to stop playing checkers.
And sometimes I'm wondering, are we even playing checkers? Or are we playing pickup jacks? I don't know.
That's right.
And I'm being serious, because I'm looking at what yes, and I know we can do better because we have everything we need.
We have it. We got so much power in them congregations.
And I do know that some of this, and it's a whole nother conversation, right? Some of this just has to also do with a lot of the soul trauma and the woundedness that we have.
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
And that we have to deal with that in order to get people ready to go out and to
Right.
organize and to be a part of, the strategic planning, to carry that plan out and to see it to the end.
Yeah.
Your end, because it also could be you won't see the change in your lifetime. And
Come
we
on.
have to be okay with that. We also have to think, yeah, you're laboring, you're working hard. You may not see the result for
Right.
you. So yes, I think that's so important
Yeah.
to do. So good work. I'm so excited about where Faith in Texas is going. Thank you, Dr. Jaime, Dr. soon to be Dr.
Hey, thank you. Speak
Jaime
it. I
Kowlessar.
need to sit down and do that
Oh,
work.
Thank you for listening. Right.
Right.
Cheryl's doing that because she's working on her doctorate too right now.
Cheryl, we need to start getting together.
We gotta get
to hold each other accountable because it's real. Yeah.
So, so thank you for being here. This great conversation, which I knew it would be, but I just have a few reminders for our listening and viewing audience. I want to remind you once again, in case you missed it at the top of the show, we have our Fannie Lou Classroom t-shirts that we're selling. You can purchase one by going to friendshipwest.org. Click on the social justice link and you will see Fannie Lou's Classroom and you can purchase your t-shirt right from the website. Super excited about our show. Next week, we're going to have one of my favorites back. She's a former professor of mine, Dr. Tamara Lewis. She is at SMU Perkins School of Theology, where she continues to teach. And we're going to talk about dispelling the myth of Christianity as a white man's religion.
Yes.
And she knows her stuff. She's going to come ready. And I think that's important because, to your point, too, what I hear now is not only do people want to be disassociated with religion and church, but it's this thing of Christianity came to y'all because white folks gave it to you during slavery.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for her to come. And then, down the road, we're going to have an episode on what happened to Black Jesus.
Yeah. Oh.
So part of what we want to do here, because this is also political. Mm-hmm. Right? This iconography, that's all political.
It is.
So I'm super excited. So make sure you all tune in next week, noon, at 12 o'clock noon, to hear Dr. Tamara Lewis talk about dispelling this myth of Christianity as a white man's religion. And then also, we want to make you mindful of an event coming up that you can be a part of. You can register for free to attend this event. It's on our Fannie Lou's Classroom Instagram page. And it is, that's a different event that I don't have right now. I'm excited about it. I'm going to tell you about it. Then I'm going to give you what's on my announcement here. But it's called Be Well, Black Reproductive Wealth in the Faith Community. That's going to be held September 30th. If you go to Fannie Lou's Classroom, you will see that on our timeline. You can register for free. And I will be the keynote speaker, but they'll also have breakout sessions. And one of the hosts is the University of North Texas. So make sure you go to Fannie Lou's Classroom, check that out, be a part of that, because part of that, I'm going to be a part of talking to clergy about that there's no separation of talking about reproductive justice
Come on.
and your faith.
Yes.
And reproductive justice is not just about abortion.
Thank you.
So we want to make sure we kind of broaden that, expand that, so we can fully understand that this is a God thing.
That's
that
right.
God is in this, and we need to know how to talk about it and have honest conversations about it. Now to the announcement I actually have down here. We're having our 5th annual Broughton Wells Lecture Series. So we started this about 5 years ago here at Friendship West as a way to introduce the work we had already been doing, but kind of show it more in an organized way around gender justice issues. And so this year we're going to talk about saving Black mothers, awareness, access, and activism. October 10th through October the 11th, 7 o'clock p.m., right here at Friendship West. It will be hybrid. We will be on all of our social media platforms. We invite you to come out and be in person as well to have a conversation, because on the Tuesday, October the 10th, we're going to do some reviewing and discussing of some clips from the documentary Aftershock that tells the story of 2 Black women who lost their lives because of the negligence of the healthcare system. So we want to talk about that, but we also have some hope in there as well, because we're going to talk about how do we prevent this from happening, how can we be a part of the solution. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be super excited to invite Dr. Anne Marie Mingo, who was newly appointed to Pittsburgh Theological Seminary over I think it's the Urban Institute, the Urban Studies Institute there, but she's a professor on staff there now. We are excited. Listen, she is the truth. So I'm not even going to give it all away, but you can Google her, but meet us on that Wednesday night, and she would talk from her book, Do You Have Good Religion? And so we're excited about that conversation Monday, Tuesday, and we'll also honor State Representative Toni Rose for her tireless efforts through several sessions to pass bills that can help in the area of maternal health, and particularly it's going to help Black women as a result of the bills that have been passed that she has been a champion for. So we want to honor that work because Austin is a tough place for Black legislators. And so we know to get anything passed in Austin requires a lot of commitment and courage to keep that going. So we're excited for her that we were able to get at least some bills passed, specifically HB 12, that extends the care of women post-birth from 6 months to 12 months, because it's recommended that women have care at least a year after giving birth. So we want to salute her on that night for her work and the work that's still left to be done. So that's what I have for you. Mark your calendar for those two events, and we'll keep announcing those as they're coming up. So again, thank you, Dr. Kowlessar, for being here. Thank you all for tuning in on today, and we look forward to seeing you on next week, 12 o'clock noon. And of course, this show will rebroadcast at 7 o'clock p.m. on tonight. So you let everyone know if they missed it at noon, they can catch it at 12 o'clock. See you next week.
From the church house.